much for joining us today.
Okay.
I'll let you take it away as you want.
Thanks very much, Frank, and very welcome to everybody. So as Frank said, I'm a beekeeper. I'm a member of two associations. Actually, I'm in Blana, which is based in Lucan, County Dublin, and North Kildare Beekeepers Association. And I keep my bees in Selbridge in County Kildare. So there's a photograph of my bees taken, I don't know when, a couple of years ago maybe, and they are bringing in the pollen. So you can see these sort of orangey colored things attached to their legs. That's the pollen. This crowd here don't have any pollen on them, but that was actually a wintertime shot. Now, in a beehive, you will have when it's at full strength, you will have 60,000 bees.
Wow.
Here's my friend Jackie having a look at her bees down in Cork. Now, inside of the beehive, you will find 3 types of bee, and they're called castes. So you find the queen bee, and most of the time there's only one queen in the hive, and she lives about 4 years. And while she's alive, she's laying not in wintertime now, but in the full flow of summertime, she'll be laying about 1,500 eggs, 1,500 eggs every single day to replace the members of the colony. There are worker bees. They're the female bees. They're the ones that you will see most commonly. And then they live about 6 weeks or so. They live 6 months in wintertime, but in summer when they're working in that, they will live 6 weeks. So they spend about more than half of their life really inside of the hive, and then the last few weeks before they die, they're outside foraging for honey. They're foraging for nectar, they're foraging for pollen, they're foraging for resin to make up the propolis, which sort of keeps the hive, it's like glue that sticks the hive together. And they bring in water as well. So it's 4 things that they will bring in. And then you've got the drone bee, which is slightly bigger than the worker, never goes out foraging for food. And the drone's main job in life is to mate with a queen. The queen only mates 1 time in her life, and she can mate at that time. She can mate with up to 15 drones, and she stores all the sperm that the drones have inseminated during that mating, and she stores that in a special little pouch inside of her body for 4 years. That's her lifetime. And so she works away using that sperm all the time. But she leaves the hive when she is mating. She goes on a mating flight. She leaves the hive. She mates with the drones. She comes back, and she never goes out again. And her life then after that is the 1,500 eggs a day. Here's just the occupants of the hive showing the size of them. So the queen is quite long. She's almost 2 centimeters long. The drones then come in next, and then the workers are the smaller ones. So that's just the job of the worker, what I said. So they're cleaner bees, they're nurse bees, they're wax building bees, and the last job inside of the hive is guard bees at the door. And then because bees will not let other bees inside from other colonies, or most of the time anyway, they won't let other bees from other colonies inside of their life. Now, bees are insects, and they undergo metamorphosis. So an egg is laid, then it turns into a larva, then it sort of turns into a pupa, which is like a chrysalis of some other insects, and then it emerges as an imago, as an adult bee. This is what an egg looks like inside of, it's about the size of a grain of rice. And as beekeepers, we're always looking at the you take out the frame of foundation, which I showed there earlier on with Jackie with her bees on the frame of foundation. And you always want to look into the cells, the empty ones, well, to see, do they have an egg inside them? And if there are eggs inside, you know that queen bee is laying and everything is hunky-dory. When you're beekeeping, this is the whole thing about checking for eggs and checking that the queen is there and all the rest of it. You have to really check your hives every 9 days maximum, but once a week is good. I do it, I try to do it on a certain day of the week so that it sort of fits in with a plan and a routine. And you check, there's a sort of a checklist that you do every single time that you're looking at your hive, and checking for eggs is one of the things that you do. This is what an empty foundation will look at. We call that wax with the honeycombs on it. We call that a foundation of wax. You put in just what we call a sheet of foundation, and it has the shape of the wax worked out on them. And then what the bees do is they work with that and they shape it into this hexagonal shape. Now there's a beautiful frame of wax, and you see the little grain of rice in the bottom of them all. That's nice eggs. The queen bee is laying nicely. Here are what the immature bees look like. Now they've been taken out of their frame, so it's not what they look like in when you're looking at. You won't see that in your hive. They have been taken out just for purposes, just to show us what they look like.
Right.
Now the development of the bee, when an egg is laid, say the hive decide they need a new queen bee, an egg is laid and 16 days later a queen bee is born. An egg is laid 21 days later, worker bees are born. An egg is laid 24 days later, a drone bee is born. So they take a different length of time, if you like, to develop when they're in the hive. Now, what bees do for us, every third bite of food that we take in a healthy diet has been pollinated by a bee. Now, wheat and barley, so any flour or oats or anything, that's wind pollinated. So bees don't have anything to do with that. But right, all of our veg, if it has a seed inside it, basically any fruits, any veg, they have all been pollinated by bees. Now, some of them, like apples, if there's a lot of wind around, the wind can carry the pollen. But there are some things which where the pollen cannot be carried, like almonds. Almonds, no matter how windy or how much of a bit of a breeze there is blowing, the almonds need bees. And there's a huge industry in countries where almonds are grown, moving bees around, like in Southern California. Yes. I mean, there's truckloads, literally millions of hives of bees are carried in trucks across state lines. They move all across the southern states in the early springtime, following the crops. And the first big one there is the almond, and it's huge money for everybody involved, the beekeepers plus the almond growers, of course.
Yeah. So
a bee will need to go to 1,000 flowers in order to make 1 spoonful of honey. And here's a bee. Here's herself out working on a flower. Now, down to the men's shed. this is where I'll be running down to the men's shed with my plan in my hand. And namely, that is, would you be ever so nice as to make me a beehive? So this is an old sort of a pretty, it's a sort of vintage looking beehive. But all beehives have the same. There's a base on them. There's an opening in there for the bees to come in and out. And then you put on sort of like boxes on top of them, and then a roof. This looks like something that would be in Mediterranean countries. Now, Frank was telling me there that somebody asked, how much would a beehive cost you? Well, if you're starting from zero, you need beehive and you need bits of equipment like tools, and you can't use a screwdriver or anything else. You just need special tools to do the beekeeping. And to start you off, I'd say it would take you the bones of €300.
That's per hive, is it?
Yes.
Right.
That
well,
is.
Tools probably could use another hive.
Well, everything. Bee Supply I get mine from Bee Supply in Sandyford, and he gives a starter kit. So it's going to be a beehive like this, although a more modern version. It'll have a base, it'll have what's called a brood box, and it will have a roof. And it will have frames for inside of the brood box. So say, I'm just going to whip right back up to my earlier, so any brood box, do you see this here?
Yes.
It's going to have about 10 of those, like a filing cabinet. There'll be about 10 of these all lined along with little lugs on the end. See where she has her hands?
Yeah, little suspension files.
So
yeah.
they sort of, it's exactly like a filing cabinet.
Yeah.
So those lugs sort of hang onto the side, and then the frame bit in the middle sort of hangs down, and you can move them up and down, and you can change them, their position in the hive and all the rest of it. But the empty brood box, or sorry, the brood box will have, depending on the size of your hive, but my brood box holds 10 of those.
Right.
So in Ireland, we commonly use 2 sizes of brood boxes. One is national and the other is commercial. And commercial is a bit bigger. I don't use commercial because when they get too big, they get too heavy, and I can't lift, you know. I'm only a young one, you know. And I can't be lifting these things. Right, so there's your hive. Now there's a wild hive. Again, you wouldn't have that out in Ireland because bees just can't survive in the cold. But you would have often seen in other countries with beekeepers coming along and breaking off this whole stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But to get started, you will need a bee suit. Don't ever go near your bees. You see all these videos on YouTube and everything like that with people with t-shirts and the whole lot. I don't know how they do it, but anyway, that's up to them, you know.
Yeah. So
now, the general this is an assembled hive, just thanks to Ablana Beekeepers. I'm a member of Ablana, and I gave a suite of slides earlier on the year. Now, so this is a sort of a broken up version of a beehive.
Yeah.
So you have a stand on the bottom, then you have a bottom board, and then on top of that, you have what's called a brood box, and that's where the queen lays the eggs. Brood is all in here.
She'd be brooding.
Brooding, yeah. And then on top of that, you put what's called a queen excluder. So she cannot go through the queen excluder. And then up here is the money. This here's the money end.
Yeah.
This is where you collect the honey. This is where it's called a super. So it's, as you see, it's only half as deep as a brood box. So you get these frames of honey up here, and as the season progresses, you just put on more and more and more supers. Then there's a crown board on top of that, and then there's a lid on the top. So if anybody is very enterprising, I mean, I know lots and lots of beekeepers, but you know what? Very few of them actually make beehives because it's quite complicated. And some of them are good at woodwork and all the rest of it, but unless you have a lot of time, you know, making these up it's quite a technical job. And you know, they're doing, the guys are doing this on a sort of a commercial scale, and they're running it through a factory sort of a setup, and they can make these beehives. But with everything there, you're talking about the bones of 200 quid.
Okay.
Or you know, with the proper stand and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
once you have that investment, then it's just a little trickle
Okay.
year on year after that.
That's for Donald and Blarney Men's Shed.
Yes, okay.
Two quick
I mean, as I said, I do know some, and you can get plans for these. You can get them on the internet.
Okay.
You know, so many, like you have to get them and do them by a specific size, because you see these frames that are inside.
Yes.
You get those, they're made of balsa wood, and you get them already made up, and they're sort of tricky. They're like Lego. They sort of fit in, click into one another, and then you sort of staple them in with very, very light nails. There's a word for the nails. I forget them. I have to go into the shop every time and describe the nail, and the lads know what I'm talking about.
Right, sort of a panel thing. And is there a type of wood preferred for a beehive?
Well, people do use cedar.
Where they can get it.
They also use deal, and I use polystyrene.
Oh.
You know, in some parts, polystyrene is a bit of a cuss word, but I like polystyrene because they are light, and I also like polystyrene because actually they keep the hive very well insulated from the cold in wintertime. So and they're price for price, they're the same pretty much. The polystyrene hive is no more expensive or less expensive. I think they're pretty much the same.
Right.
Here's a nice one here. This is the double hive. I have seen one of those. They're really well insulated. They're good for other countries. People do use them in Ireland, but they're actually fiddly to work with because you've got a hive within the frame on the outside. They look magnificent. We do have a few of those in our association apiaries, but I don't know a lot of people who use them. And you were saying, Frank, there that there are pictures of bees in caves in northern Spain, and there was honey found in some of the in some of the pyramids. And this is an old skep, and it's made of rope or reed that's wrapped around. And I do know there's a woman up near me in Dunlavin who makes these.
Oh.
I've never used them, but they are the old style. So what people used to do was they would collect their honey in the skep, and then actually they destroyed the skep and they made themselves a new one then for the next year. And you know, so I don't know anybody. The more of a sort of a heritage thing nowadays, you know.
Right.
And the red mark is here. That's to show the bees where the entrance is. Now here's a bee stand. So this one will hold 2 or maybe 3. So you put your beehive here, one there, one on the other end, and then this area in the middle leaves you space to put all the parts, to place all the parts when you're working at the hive.
Ah, yes.
Now, you keep the hive up off the ground for hygiene reasons for the bees, but also so that you don't have to be bending down all the time and lifting stuff. So if you have it at waist height, it's sort of more friendly for the body.
Yeah.
This is another stand with the legs folded. So say some of the beekeepers will bring their hives out to the heather. So they put one of these in the back of the van or a couple of those so that they can place that on the ground in a sort of a fairly secure situation, and then they can put their hives on top of that. And you have to have them level and all the rest of it. So because the bees are they load their honey in according to gravity, and if you're collecting heather honey, there's a bit of a routine with to get heather honey looking lovely and in the cut comb. You know those cut combs that you buy?
Yes.
Heather honey is often used for that, and just they want all the combs. Now, if you're placing an apiary, there's another one of those. Just if you're making, now these are easy to make, so they tell me. If you're making a hive with splayed legs like that, they're more secure. They don't topple over as easily. So that's just a little. If you get a plan, make sure that the scheme has the splayed legs in it, because they're handy. And then this looks like one that you can sort of fold up as well and throw in the back of the car.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Mick Keaveney from Lewisburg Men Shed asks, is there a regulation for the distance a hive should be from a neighbour's boundaries? And also, are you aware of flow beehives?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, listen, I did keep a beehive. My very, very first beehive was kept in the back garden. But I wouldn't advise it. I mean, I live in a sort of a fairly densely housing estate, and you know, I had it up against the wall and the neighbours. And when my neighbour mowed the lawn, you see, I'm not big into mowing the lawn, but when my neighbour mowed the lawn, the bees sort of they boiled out a bit. Now, they weren't in stinging him or anything like that, but they were looking itchy,
agitated,
you know, a little bit. Yeah. So it's, I don't know the distance, but I definitely would not hold any more bees in a housing estate unless you had huge gardens in the back. You'd be as well off to just sort of ask a beekeeper to have a look at it, and the beekeeper would be able to give you an indication. Like, obviously, if you're in some area where everyone has huge back gardens, that's okay. But in my particular case, no. Now, here I have the beehives in a guarded apiary. Now, sometimes if you say have it in the corner of a field or something like that, you have to keep it away from cattle, horses and everything else, because they'll come up scratching against this and they'll disturb the whole thing. Now, this could be in a place where you have other animals, that, like in America, where they have bears and that'll go and attack the hives. In Ireland, we don't have too many mice come in, but this isn't going to stop a mouse. And we have ways. You can put a mouse guard on your hive in winter time. And what was the other question that the beekeeper from Lewisburg? Oh, the flow hive.
The flow hive.
Yeah. I personally do not have experience of flow hives, but I've been on lots of different conversations. And listen, you have to. They're not put the flow hive in the garden and collect the honey at the end of the season. You have to maintain them just the same way as you do. So I wouldn't go for one.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And you do not. Yeah, flow hives have plastic foundation inside them. I actually prefer to use the wax, the more natural thing. So I know flow hives were a great thing, and they were advertised in Australia and all the rest of it like that. And the guys who devised them said, you know, you put them there, you go inside, feet up, and then a couple of months later you go and collect the honey. And I'm sorry, it's not that. And people are finding that as well, you know.
Nothing's that easy.
Seemingly they're hellishly expensive. Now here's a gorgeous apiary, very well kept and all the rest of it. I'm not too keen on, like, okay, I like the grass cut around the beehive, but I like a few dandelions, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Have I gone over half an hour or what way?
No, you're great.
Yeah,
stay there now. I have a few.
Okay, give me the questions then.
More than a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Dennis O'Sullivan asks, can I adopt a hive? I think that may be possible, where some beekeepers would put a hive in his garden and they look after it. Have you come across that?
Yes, you can. And I know there's, you might need to take this name down, Stephen Gallagher. He's from North Kildare Beekeepers, and he's running a business, I think, and it's called, he does swarms.ie, and he also does this thing where he marries people with. So if you want to put your hive on somebody's farm, he'll link you up with them. And if you want somebody to put it on your farm, he'll link you up. So he does the two-way match. So Stephen Gallagher, he's on Facebook, and he does. I don't know what the name of the thing is, but just get on to Stephen Gallagher. He does swarms.ie is one of his things, and his new business now is it's something like Find a Keeper.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
But I've already seen him getting questions, people asking him, either people saying, I've got land, I want to give let people hold bees on it, or I want to have a hive and I want somewhere to put it. So if you are a city beekeeper, you might find somebody or somewhere to put your hive. So that's becoming quite a thing now, but Stephen's the man to connect on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Very good question here now from, excuse me. Brian McCormick asks, how can you get rid of varroa mites, excuse my pronunciation.
Well, there are commercial treatments for varroa mites. There are 4, I think, different commonly used. One of them, like you just put strips of chemical inside the hive at certain times of the year. Now is not really the time to be doing it because those chemicals do contaminate the honey. So there's it's not a simple matter of just putting in the chemical, but there are 4 different ways of treating varroa mites. One of the safest, I suppose, but the trickiest to do is what's called oxalic acid. You vaporize the oxalic acid through the hive, but that's done in the down season. So it's done in autumn and winter.
Right, very good.
Yeah.
The Dacia men, Michael Kavanagh from the Dacia men sheds, who you're familiar with, have been looking after bees for a while.
Yeah.
They have a question about your views on the new Apis Protect product. Excuse my pronunciation. Is it worthwhile and value for money as we're thinking of investing? Have you come across that one?
I wonder, is the Apis Protect project the one that they're working with down in Cork? What's her name? Is it a Dr. Murphy? I saw a webinar there recently. I don't really know now. I have not used it, and I actually have not spoken to anyone who has personally used it. And whatever the cost of the unit, I know it only works on one hive at a time.
Right.
So it gives you all the information you need to know on one hive, but if you've got 10 hives, but you would need to connect with her directly, because I think she said she was going to give some, if you like, consideration. She's already run this now in America, where there's obviously millions of beekeepers
and commercial.
But I think she said, and it, with volume of use and all the rest of it, she was able to give them a good deal. So I would contact her directly at UCC and see what sort of a deal. But just remember that that system only works for one hive. You cannot move it from one hive. It's a way of monitoring hives and what's going on in hives.
Right, so, like Moocall for hives.
That's what I would say there. I really don't know.
A question about insurance. Do you need third-party insurance?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And this is why I suggest everybody joins an association, because
yes.
in your membership is your insurance.
Yes.
So I would not do it, because say, for instance, you ask a neighbor to give you a hand and something happened, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No, understood.
definitely,
Absolutely.
there is insurance, and I think it covers, like, it's pretty comprehensive in what it covers. It's third party. It's for you as well if anything happened, you or the beekeeper themselves. But it's not very expensive, and anyway, listen, I will say to everybody, and I mean, I'm not just saying it because I'm a member of Irish Beekeepers Association, but I would say join a local association.
Makes sense.
Join
Yeah.
it,
At
because
least one man of the shed could join and get the hives covered that way, maybe.
oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
But I would suggest it. But you see, now, men's shed might have something, but definitely in a shed, definitely there would have to be, if you're like a designated beekeeper. I don't know how to get around the you know, but definitely you would need to eat both.
Yeah, no, that
From
makes
the men's
sense.
shed legal team and also the beekeepers, you know.
Yeah. No, you
Whoever
need-
gives us, I actually don't know who the underwriter is with the insurance, but we've
Yeah.
always had insurance, and you know, it's
Yeah. Okay. We will talk with we use FBG. We have a relationship with FBG. Not all sheds use them for the insuring the shed, but maybe it's something. If there was interest, we could take to them and see what they do, or as you say, go to the association.
yeah, but well, there's I know I've dealt with FBD with I mean, I have a forestry plantation. I've dealt with FBD for farming insurance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, just shop around anyway.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that the beekeepers insurance is specifically for beekeeping, so it just might be properly geared towards that, and it's not expensive. But then you can link it in with your with your shed. That's another matter. It's
Okay.
You know, it's out of my bailiwick, as it were. Yeah.
I have a couple more questions for you, Caroline, and thank you very much.
No, not at all.
Great response.
Yeah, yeah.
The next question from Noel Lane, and bear with me. When queen cells are evident and you plan to split the hive to prevent swarming, would you transfer the old queen with the brood and the frame of bees at that time?
Yes.
Yeah, great answer. Okay.
Yeah.
And Ray Keeley from the Swordsman Shed, thanks you very much for your presentation. It's superb. He's learned much. He has a couple of questions. Look, bees wants a beehive, but I'm living in a small gardened house in an estate. So how do I commence? So I think you've answered that in a sense of they don't really work in housing estates, but
but you never know. Like out in Swords, there you might have, say,
I know there's what are they called? Siemens have a health facility out there on about 3 or 4 or 5 acres. I'm sure if you contacted a local business with land around, you know, those estates, those industrial estates.
And also there's another one called, I'm trying to think of it, something house, Newbridge House, is it?
Oh yes, yeah. That's right. That's out that road. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, they might, and they have a huge area and all the rest of it, and they might have, you know, an area that's away from where the general footfall of people, you know, because like they've got one in Russborough House. They've got to be North Kildare have beehives in Russborough House. Now there's people visiting there all the time. Like
yes.
Bees they're not out to get you.
Yeah.
Like if you walk right up to their hive and start knocking it over, then they will.
Yeah.
But you know, so there's a lot of people going to visit Russborough, and there hasn't been been a problem. It's just out of the way of the main.
For
you know,
everybody's sake, the bees as well as the humans.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So you might get somewhere out there or something like that. And as you said, Siemens or any of these factories, and there's lots of businesses nowadays are looking for a beehive because it'll give them a green credential.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
they're up their eco credentials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray also asks, do you need a license or permission of any sort to get started?
No.
Okay, and then during the winter, what do you do during the winter?
You snuggle them up during the winter. You make sure that, like, you will be like I strap down my hives using this is the tail end of it, a ratchet strap.
Oh, very good.
So
Yes,
I strap down my hives. I've oodles of those ratchet straps all over the place. I strap down my hives to the stand.
Yes.
You know, you make sure that there's no, they're not going to get flooded with water. You make sure that they're in a sort of a reasonably airy place, but not too stuffy, because you do need a flow of air to sort of keep the hive nice and dry. So during the winter, that's pretty much what you do. And you just go to the hive every now and again just to make sure that they just just look in at the top of the cover there. You'll have put in food maybe, and you just make sure that they have enough food. So you go to them during winter time, maybe once a month or thereabouts, for a 5-minute look.
Yeah.
And you have them all nicely strapped down. You make sure there's no hanging branches that are likely to break. I mean, I know we can't if there's a storm comes through or whatever. You know, you just have to
protect them as best as possible.
Yeah.
Dermot Long from Caherdavan and District Shed asks, and I like the style of his question. Dermot wants to know, how much honey can you get from a typical hive? And you're going to say, how long's a piece of string?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I suppose you can get, I mean, people are getting, like, it's huge, anything from 20 up to 70 pounds.
It depends on the amount of supers, I'm guessing.
Well, you put on the supers as they make the honey. So it depends on the weather.
Ah, right, okay.
So, I mean, last year was not a good harvest year.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't know. I think the weather was cold at the wrong time when the, you know, you have to think of when the main flowers are flowering, what's the weather like? Now, bad weather can mean that the flowers don't flower very well, but it can also mean that the bees can't fly.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so it just depends on the season.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one final question.
Yes.
And again, thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Jerry Gallagher asks, and it's probably a very valid question, how do I get bees when we're starting up?
Oh, yes. Again, if you're in an association, or I suppose if you're not in an association, you can still contact somebody from the association and ask for what's called a nuke or a nucleus. And that is a queen, some brood, and sufficient bees to keep going. So you'll usually get a nucleus in a smaller box, and the beekeeper will give you that smaller box, and then you gradually put it into your bigger box, and then you might return that small nucleus box to the beekeeper.
Gotcha.
So, and the nucleus could cost you it depends on the beekeeper and how good they are and all the rest of it. They can cost you anything up to €200 to get you started. So that's a very good question, actually, right. Because not only do you need your hives, but you also need the actual bees, and you know, that's what that'll cost. But you need a good queen, you know, you need it from a reliable source. And by the way, on the point of view of if you buy equipment, I would say do not buy secondhand, because there are diseases going around, not only varroa, that's a pest, it's not a disease, but there's 2 other diseases, American foul brood and European foul brood, and they're bacterial diseases. and they are a stickler to get rid of.
Okay.
So,
And just for the nervous treasurers out there, that roughly 250 for the bees is on top of the 250, 300 for the hive.
precisely.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So
Now you might know somebody who says to you, if you get a beehive, I'll give you a free colony of bees. Happy days.
yeah, and you can network that through our association.
You can network that. Yeah. And if you're in your association or you know, I mean, some people have got 10 colonies of bees and they say enough.
Yeah.
So they'll say to you, do you mind if I offload a colony of bees off to you? You might find somebody in that situation, and you know, they would either give it to you for nothing or for consideration. So you know, you just need to network. But I'm saying that be prepared that you will have to pay anything up to €200 for a good colony of bees in what's called a nuke, or nucleus is the long word for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question actually.
And without putting you on the spot, is there a better place in Ireland for rearing bees, for breeding bees? What's the right expression?
I don't know.
Again,
I mean,
it's the weather, is it? So.
Yeah, I mean, but we've got successful beekeepers all over the country.
Right. Okay.
You know, from Donegal to Cork, from east to west, we've got successful beekeepers. And, you know, a good thing about that is we try to ensure that people get bees locally, because our local bees have been bred from generation to generation in our climate. So if you buy bees from Italy, they might be fantastic in Italy, but then when they come here into our cold, wet summers, they're not good because they're just not used to it. It's like, say, putting out hill sheep. They thrive and survive on the hills, but you know, put merino sheep here in Ireland, which were developed in Spain, well, they're not going to survive because it's too wet for them, you know.
Yeah. Caroline, fantastic. There's loads of questions coming in.
Yeah, well, if you want to put them there, you know.
Okay, a quick one. Dan Malone found out he was allergic to bee stings after he got the hive, and he had to get rid of them on the doctor's advice. There's a test, isn't there?
I think there is, yes.
And that's probably local doctor you talk to about that. Have you ever heard of a situation where you've built a hive, no laying asks, and a swarm will find it?
Yes.
They can move in, rent free. Yeah. Put a sign up, rent free, Airbnb.
Yeah. Well, you can buy in the bee suppliers, you can buy little, what's called swarm lures. So you put up, and I mean, listen.
Lemongrass oil, I think. No.
Lemongrass oil is one, yeah. But all the beekeepers will put out what's called a swarm trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an empty hive, basically, with this chemical inside. And then they usually put in a few, not full, because bees, like, if they see an empty space, they say, yippee, this is it, now we can settle in here. So people often put in sort of old frames that still have a bee smell off them, and they sort of like that.
Yes. Now, listen, you have done us no end of service, and we can't thank you enough.
Okay.
I'm going to give a huge plug to your website because it has a wealth of information on there. Irish Beekeepers Association.com.
Yes.
So that's Irish Beekeepers Association.com. A fantastic mine of information.
And Stephen Gallagher is the guy if you're looking for
swarms.ie.
If you want a speed dating to find a locality for your hive, or if you're looking for a farmer, or if anyone is out there would say, look, I haven't got time to keep bees, but I would love a hive in my garden, Stephen's the man.
Yeah, and a lot of orchards looking for that. I have a friend up in Castle Bellingham growing pears, and he's always looking for anyone to put hives on his land because it's great for the pear trees.
That's right, absolutely.
Caroline,
thank you
so much.
That's what you wrote. Okie dokie.
Slán go leir.
Take care. Thanks, man. Bye, everybody. Bye.